Welcome to the Off the Record podcast with Niek. My guest today is Kayla Williiams, a 60s, 70s, and 80s yacht pop inspired artist originally from Red Deer, now calls Calgary home. And she recently produced her brand new single, Stealing From My Youth, with Spencer Cheney, a Juno award-winning producer. And it's a pleasure to have her today on the Off the Record podcast. How are you doing today, Kayla?
I'm great. I thought you were going to say, welcome a 60-year-old woman. And then you said 60s, 70s artist. Anyway.
Yeah.
She's 60 years old. But she looks great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'd love to know, tell me about yacht pop, and I guess what inspired you to get involved in that genre.
So originally the term is yacht rock, but I'm coining it yacht pop. Another artist called it this, and I love it. It's yacht rock is like a soft 70s subgenre of that decade. It's very groovy. There's certain artists like Steely Dan and Doobie Brothers and stuff that were happening at that time, and I kind of took that, was inspired by that, recorded music similar to that style, but much more pop, and then with a very feminine perspective, because there was no female artists at that time. It was all male pretty much. So that's the twist on it. Yeah.
Well, you've been playing music for a long time. Can you tell me when you first started as an artist, and what you remember from like years ago, and how you first started?
Sure. I've been doing this a long time. I would say 10 years solid performing consistently. And, started with my own project, moved into a musical comedy duo, did that, toured all over the place, lived in different places, like lived in Australia, did lots of different things. And then came back and focused in the last 4 years back on my own music again, because I just felt called to. I feel like the kind of music I'm doing isn't really popular, but it's what I love, and why not? And so very retro inspired stuff. And I love what I do. It's a long, hard journey, as any artist knows. This is not for the faint of heart, but there's no quitting. There's just so many things to do, so many different projects to perform in. And I'm having a great time doing it.
Well, and like you said, you're talking a little bit about the other projects you're involved in, but what do you feel like being involved in these different projects and bands has kind of, a lot of people might be involved in one project for a long time, but how has that kind of developed your sound and your style over the years?
I would say especially the comedy duo developed a good stage presence. It, as a comedian, being on stage, you have to be on your toes. You're dealing with hecklers. You're going through lots of different, things up there. So I used to be really scared of the talking. The music was easy, and what do you say in between? And now I get hired to host things, and super comfortable with the onstage banter and, just that kind of thing, which was always terrifying before. So I think that's what my strongest, I'd say, growth has been. And then just doing performance, same thing. It's I used to be shaking when I performed, and now I might get nervous for some things, but pretty comfortable after this much time. And I love it. So it's more like a high adrenaline.
And well, you've been recognized for a lot of your work. I mean, you've gotten 3 grants, and you actually produced a single for the 2019 Winter Games here in Red Deer, and it was broadcast on TSN. Can you just tell me about that experience and what it was like to perform in front of all those people?
Yeah, that was a really cool one. It came through with a production company out of Toronto, which I wasn't expecting. And somehow my name came in the play. So they wanted an original song for their athletes. So I wrote that, recorded it very quickly, got it out, and then performed. And I think there was over 8,000 people there at the Centrium here in Red Deer, the big arena. And I was nervous for that one for sure. I felt some heart palpitations. And who would have thought my first TV experience would be on a sports channel, not me. So very cool though, the coolest footage ever having that. It was a thrill. Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is great. So tell me about maybe what is your creative process like when you come up with new songs? Are you do you typically come up with the music? Or are you somebody that sits down and writes down some lyrics or just ideas as you're going through your day? Or
I have lyric ideas sometimes and I write notes in my phone, but I'd say mostly it's music first. So I sit down at the keyboard, I just pop a bunch of chords out, whatever feels good that I eventually like. I sing over top nonsense words, and then eventually I loop that and find the lyrics for it. That's how I write by myself, but I've also been now recently in some co-writes, which is a really interesting experience and very vulnerable. So you have to, sit down with someone and throw lyrics at each other, which is very terrifying, really, because it's so personal, usually that part. So, but it's been good. I've kind of pushed myself out of my comfort zone doing some co-writes now. So yeah, it's fun. And in terms of like inspiration, I'd say because of the style I'm doing, it's easier because I'm like, okay, I want to write a song that sounds like yacht rock, right now. That's the vibe. Whereas in the past, it was kind of like, I feel like I wrote a lot of different styles and was just all over the place, sort of a mixed mash. So it's actually easier narrowing into like a field.
Did you have like a musical family growing up, or are there mentors and people that you looked up to that helped you get to where you are?
No, my family, absolutely not. They all don't know where I came from, but it's fun. I'm the, concert doer of the family. They come to all my shows. I don't know why. I just was always singing since I was like 3 years old. And then inspiration wise, I think no one personally, but when I found the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson, I was like, this harmonies, vocals, everything. I got obsessed to a weird degree that my mom tried to ban me from listening to it, but it didn't work. And then eventually I even met him because of my YouTube videos of their songs. And that was a crazy, full circle thing. And I actually got to meet my hero. So that was my inspiration, but no one really immediately, I would say in my life, was an influence.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things that I really, am like one of the reasons I wanted to start this project is with this like pandemic and situation we went through, kind of music and podcast stuff is things that helped me through the pandemic. And what I would love to know from each artist is kind of like, we know when you go to a concert, what the fans get from singing the songs and just the concert experience. But what do you as an artist now like get from performing on stage, and what's that like coming back on stage after not being able to for a while?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after that chunk of time, it was pretty hard. And that first show, pretty sure it was an outside concert somewhere, and we put it on ourselves, and people were just flocking from the streets because it was so rare at that point. Mm-hmm. And it made me nervous again. It'd been so long enough that I was nervous, but it was so thrilling. And then the last 2 summers for me have actually been the busiest. Even in the midst of the pandemic, I got to perform more than ever because I think those outdoor concerts and people were lacking live music so much that they were just creating opportunities everywhere. So having all of that and these like backyard intimate settings and getting to know people, that energy was actually sometimes better than even playing at a venue that people just are normally just popping into and having drinks. It was like everyone was eating up every word and loving every minute. And I felt that like you just feed off of that energy. So it was like a good, symbiotic relationship. Everyone was getting something. Yeah. Felt, I think, good on both sides.
Yeah, I agree. Like great to do it in the open air and just, really makes you just outside of just like, concert venues or whatever, just cut it down to like a guitar or whatever, just do it, a fire pit, whatever, a good environment. Just make it happen yourself. So what, I'm kind of interested, like what kind of, what are you hoping to, like, what are some of your goals coming up? Do you have like kind of what kind of impact do you hope that your music has on people?
With this project specifically, when I was applying for funding as well, I kind of wrote my goal being, I wanted to write music that I grew up listening to, like that made me very fulfilled and happy. And when I was in the pandemic, I was listening to these songs that were just, the Hall & Oates and all the lighthearted stuff that like, feels great, makes you feel good, and wasn't I love a sad song, don't get me wrong, but I didn't want to create that. I was like, we're all sad. I want to create music that feels good, that makes me feel good, that hopefully makes our audience feel good, really upbeat and light and not sad, which is hard because I love writing that. But yeah, it was a new thing for me to write like upbeat songs and happy songs. And that's sort of my goal is I want to bring like joy to the stage and joy to an audience and myself, and just feel good is the term I'm going with.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's about like all your music. Not only do you have great vocals and great music, but also being in the other projects and with the comedy and stuff like that. It's good to make people laugh and stuff like that. Can you tell me a little bit about your new single, Stealing from My Youth, and what inspired that?
Yeah, that came out in the fall of 2020. So it was absolutely written during the craziness, the dry period, the dark days, if you will. And I was just feeling it really deeply at that point. I was a little depressed, as we all were. And I was scared, like, what is life as an artist going to be? Is even being a musician a possibility anymore? I was really concerned at that time. And so in the lyrics, it's a little bit depressed and a little bit scared of what's going on in the world is essentially the message, but also the hope of, I hope and feel that we're going to make it through this and it's going to be better than ever. But the main tag being the stealing from my youth was the pandemic. I was like, you're taking my days. Yeah. I need to be doing this, and it's all getting taken away from me is what it felt like at the time. So it's a little bit of, sad, but hopeful.
It's amazing. What accomplishment that you've been performing for a while, but what are you most proud of that you've been able to do so far?
It's a good question. I would say just literally making a living being an artist in any facet, the comedy or music or anything, especially through the pandemic. Like, I'm also a voice coach, so I had a full roster of clients during that dark period where I wasn't performing. I still ended up having a job. Like, being self-employed and making it through a pandemic, I was like, if I can do that as a musician, I can do anything. Like, that's a huge win for me. And I'd say right now, just being in so many projects and being able to do what I love and make it a literal living, make it a part of my life and be paid for it is crazy. That's awesome. That's success to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, would you mind to play some music for us today?
1,000%. I will.
Thank you so much. This is the latest song you've released, Stealing from My Youth. Can you tell me a little bit about that song and what inspired it?
Sure. It was written in the midst of the pandemic, in the hardest part of the pandemic. And I was pretty depressed and it was challenging to get through. And I didn't know if life would be possible as a musician. So I kind of wrote it as this heartfelt ballad of what's life right now. It's kind of depressing, but with hope, with a hint of hope and, goodwill that everything would work out and that things would be better than ever at the end of it and that it will end. So it's that bittersweet sort of message.
thank you for sharing that with us. It was fantastic, and I hope you all enjoyed it. So the next song is actually a brand new song, actually unreleased yet, and we're going to hear it for the first time. So can you tell us about that song and what inspired it and why you wrote it?
Yeah, so this one's called Deep End. It's very new, and my band just learned it with me and made it very cool. So I wish they were here, but it's basically about being afraid to do this, being afraid to pursue being an artist. And it's a very difficult career to follow. And it's definitely far away from the traditional norm of what people maybe expect. So, you know, it's when I was a kid, I had no fear, as most children didn't, to jump in. You just jump in the water. You're not dipping toes. You're not scared. You're just going for it. And that's kind of the message is I'm trying to, in this song, I reference myself as a kid and just jumping in, diving in, and not being afraid to just go for your dreams and follow what you're doing and have that childlike fearlessness, if you will.
Absolutely. And I guess to feed off of that a little bit, I'd love to know what kind of message you would give to other artists that are maybe seeing you for the first time and inspired by what you're doing, whether they're younger or maybe they're just scared to do this.
Yeah.
And, what kind of words can you give to them?
I would say two things. I would say don't give up, because it's easy to give up, right? It's easy to get scared and think that things won't work out. Or if you're doing it for a long time, like 10 plus years, and you feel like it's not going where you thought it would, just realize most, even really quote unquote successful artists, didn't happen overnight. Most of them had to go through a lot, and and then you see them at a point in their career and you think it's brand new, but they've been doing it for a while. So it's a part of, it's also, if you love it that much, if you really love it, then there's just no point in giving up, because why would you give up something you love? And if you can find a way. There's so many different fields in all of these industries, in any artistic field that you could follow. It doesn't have to just be the performer. It can be behind the scenes. It can be producing. It can be songwriting. If it's to be absolutely famous, like Katy Perry or whatever, Britney Spears famous, maybe that's your goal, but maybe it doesn't have to be that. That's not necessarily, I think, the pinnacle of every kind of success. That also comes with a lot of baggage, I would assume. That kind of fame is pretty hard. So what level of success do you want? Where do you want to be? Do you want to just be around your hometown? Do you want to be around your province, around your country, touring to different places? Because any one of those options is possible. Absolutely. So I think if you love it, find a way to do it.
Just enjoy the journey, enjoy the ups and downs. And
yeah,
I mean, I know you've been able to also give back to different charities. You've been able to play at the Hub a couple times, to play for people with disabilities and different communities,
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about that experience, what it's like to just kind of give back to your community, what it's like to play in Central Alberta.
It's huge. I think it's huge. I always try to do a few fundraiser shows and provide without asking, and for always good causes. The last one we did was with the band for, I believe it was Central Alberta Mental Health, which is very important, I think, especially now. I think it's great, like whatever you can do. I also often volunteer at retirement homes and play music for people that can't get out and see shows. And I play war tunes, so it's a little different, but I'm an old soul and I love doing it. I think at any level, all of those things are important, right? Giving back and finding a way to let your voice and music, if you can, give something to someone else, and I think there's a lot of joy in things, but that's a special thing to do.
Yeah.
Why not?
Fantastic. Well, this is The Deep End by Kayla Williiams. Enjoy it. Brand new unreleased song.
Under the cover
That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your talent and your vocals with us. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about your musical journey with all of us. If anyone's interested in finding out more about your music, where can they find you?
Everything would be at KaylaWilliams.com, but all the Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Kayla Williams Music, at Kayla Williams Music. And thank you for doing this. This is a great thing to be showcasing all these artists. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the Velvet Olive and Radio here for hosting us. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for tuning into this episode of Off the Record with Niek Thielen. And we'll see you next time for another episode.
You're not dipping a toe. You're not scared. You're just. That is not me.
That's on me.
Is that you? Oh.